Welcome to Excel 2010 Statistics video number 27. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, Excel 2010 Statistics Chapter 3, click on the link below the video. In this video here, we're going to talk about new functions, Excel 2010 new functions for percentile, quartile, and rank. We're going to talk about percentile.exclusive, percentile.inclusive, the parallel functions for quartile, percentile rank, and also the two new rank functions. Now, in this video, we're really going to concentrate on percentile. There's two functions, exclusive and inclusive, and they're calculated slightly differently. And also, the textbook has another method also. Now, the lucky thing is, if you have large data sets, there's not too much difference between these methods. All right, let's go over and look at our Excel workbook. We're going to start on the sheet per.exe for percentile.exclusive. Here's the percentile.exclusive function. And well, actually, before we talk about the three different methods, percentile, the concept is quite easy. And we'll see when we calculate the three methods for a big data set, they're virtually the identical same answers. But all percentile tries to do is if you say percentile 90, we want to look through a sorted list from smallest to biggest and find a marking point in the list which says 90% of the values are below and 10% of the values are above. All right, we're going to start with the percentile.exe. The one difference between exe and .inc is you can't use 0 or 100% when you're doing exclusive. I mean, those are excluded. And the position, the calculation for position is done n, that's the count of all the items in your list, plus 1 times the percentile. Now, we talked about this the last couple of videos. The conceptual way to understand percentile is if you know what median is, right? A sorted list, you pick the one in the middle. Percentile is still picking a single number to divide the set into two. But here, instead of 50-50 for median, we're doing 90-10. All right, let's go ahead and calculate, do the method for calculating percentile.exclusive, and then we'll see how the function works. First, if you're doing it by hand, you have to count. And we're going to use the count function because we're counting all the numbers. All right, so there's 14 total. So somewhere in here between 1 and 14, we're going to need to find a position, right? And that'll tell us what the number is. These are CPA scores, right? So here's our position calculation, equals in parentheses n plus 1 times our percentile. All right, so that says 13.5. That means we have to find the 13.5 value. Well, here's 13 and 14. It's just right in between there. Now, we're going to do a little formula here that'll always extract the just the decimal part. If I take, hey, because we need that 0.5 to tell us how far between the interval we have to go, which means 0.5 just means, hey, go halfway through. So I'm going to say, hey, that's 13.5, right? Minus, and I really want 13.5 minus 13, so I'll use the int function. The int function just takes the integer part of that 13 and leaves the 0.5 off. That's how far through the interval we have to go. Well, what's the distance between the 13th and the 14th, right? Because we need 13.5. Well, we take the upper minus the lower. So 38. Now we simply multiply 38 times 0.5, and that says how much we need to add to the lower side, that 59. So equals 38 times 0.5. So now the marking point becomes 59 plus the 19. That's halfway through the interval, 78. So the 78 becomes the marking point for this percentile method here. 90% of the CPA scores are below 78, and 10% are above. Oh, I have that. That's not correct. You'd think I would have an editor. Right? 90% of the CPA scores are below the score of 78, and 10% above. Now let's look at the percentile.exe. Percentile exclusive, we simply highlight the numbers, comma, and tell it the percentile, and it'll do it for us. All right, so that's a lot of hassle to go through calculating that, but at least if you're going to use this a lot, you know how this function is calculating. Now let's go to our next sheet, per.inc. The difference here is per.inc. You can use 0 and 100%. The 100th percentile would just give you the maximum. The 0th percentile would just give you the minimum. And then here's how the position is calculated. All right, so our count. And our position, I'm going to say p times our n, and then add a little bit extra. So really, this is calculating the position p times n, then adding just a little bit above it. So 1 minus 90%, so we'll add 0.1 to it. Wow, look at our position is totally different. In our percentile.exc, we got 13.5. Here we get 12.7. Now, how far between? Well, I need to get that 0.7 out of there. So I'm going to say, hey, that whole thing minus the int. So that was that right there. Now, the distance between the upper and the lower equals, and I take the upper one minus the lower. You can see there's not much difference. It's just a few 5, right? And then the amount to add to the lower end. So I need to add 3.5. So my calculation for the marking point, take the lower one. Remember, we're trying to get between these two numbers as our marker point. So I take the lower end plus the interval. So it's 57.5. OK, so then the percentile function will do this automatically. Now notice, copy, and there's our 0.9. Wow, 57.5. That's quite different than our 78 we got over there. Now the reason why is because on smaller data sets, you can get a big difference. Larger data sets, you're not going to have as much difference. Now, let's just look at if you were using an earlier version, and this is true for quartile and percentile rank. This function right here, the older functions work exactly like the .inc. So just to prove it to ourselves. All right, now finally, we're going to go over to PER textbook. This is how the textbook does it. And there's the 3-step process. You first sort A to Z, and that's true when you're doing percentile and quartile, smallest to biggest. You have to count. Our position is n times p. And by the way, in the book, they give you percentage. They say take the number 90 and divide it by 100. I'm just never going to do that. Back in chapter 00, I pointed that out. I kind of think that's silly. If we know the percentage, it's either 90% or 0.9. We don't need to take 90 and divide it by 100. All right, so there we go. Oh, so the position is 12.6. Now, here's where the textbook method differs a little bit. There's the first 2 steps, sort A to Z, smallest to biggest, and then calculate your I. That's what we did. If it is not an integer, round up to the next position. If it's an integer, average I and I plus 1. Well, this is our I, right? That's our index or position, 12.6. This is not an integer, so we go the 12.6 up to 13th. So for this example, our percentile value, which marks the 90th percentile, would be the 13th position. All right, so the textbooks, you can use 0 and 100, and that is our position. So 3 different methods. And in our small data sets, we are getting some big differences here. Again, statistics is filled with all sorts of estimates and different ways to do things. But on a larger data set, you will get similar values, or the difference shouldn't be as much. Now, we will go look at that data set in just a second here, but I want to point out, we just talked about percentile.exe, percentile.inc, and our textbook method. And we saw all 3 methods and how they're calculated, how we get to our answer how we do the calculations for the three methods. Let's go over to the sheet QUA.X. So the quartile dot exclusive is calculated exactly the same way as the percentile. The methods used, and you can come and look at this if you want. Same with quartile.inc. I'm on the QUA.inc sheet. The methods used for percentile inc are the same as the methods used for quartile.inc, and you can look through them here if you'd like. Same with the textbook. We saw the parallel last video. Quartile 3 is the same as percentile 0.75 or 75%. All right, so I'm not going to go through those, but there they are for you. Quartile, I'm going to go to the sheet called quartile. And now, just as we did last video, when we did in the last video, we saw 75 percentile and third quartile, and we calculated the same answer. Now, I want to do quartile.exc and quartile.inc here. Now, exclusive, again, will not allow a 0 and a 4, or if we're doing percentile, a 0% and a 100%. But let's just see how that would work. So the array would be all the numbers, F4 to lock it. And then you could put in a 0. Now, notice the screen tip is really polite. It's telling you you can't use 0. If it's not there, you can't use it. But I'm just going to show you what happens. You get a number error. No problem. You know, this function, you use 1, 2, 3, and you're absolutely fine. So if you prefer the .exc method of calculating, I actually kind of like it. Other textbooks I've used in this class use this method for calculating the quartile or percentile. You can use this one. However, if you want to, in our textbook and a lot of examples I'll use the .inc, and it's approximately the same. So let's go ahead and calculate. So it will allow you 0 and 4. I'm going to lock that with the F4 key. And you can see here it does allow that. And I'm going to come over here and get that 0. OK, so here's a small data set here. We can see the inclusive will do the 0 and the 4. If you have your percentile, I did my percentiles over here. You can do the 0 and 100%. You can see we get the same answers when we use the INC. Now, here's the exclusive and the inclusive. Not much difference here. The median is going to be the median no matter what, and there's a little bit of difference there. All right, so quartile, the two methods there. Now, why is quartile with the 0 and the 4 important? Well, because these 5 numbers are the min, first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, and max. And there are some statistical charts like box plots, which we will create ourselves next video, uses these 5 numbers. It helps to show the spread in the data. All right, so quartile. Now, let's go over to the sheet large data set. Now, here we have a larger data set. Here's entrance exam scores. I'm going to click on the top cell and control down arrow. That just shows me, oh, it looks like I have 104 values, right? Because one of the top ones is in the value. So let's go ahead and calculate each one of these. I'm going to calculate the exclusive and inclusive with 0.75. So I'm going to click Control Shift down arrow F4. All right, and so I'll enter this. All right, so 74 is the marker. It says for percentile, 75% below, 25% above. Now let's try the other one. Inclusive. All right, so I calculate that. Get exactly the same value. Now, for some data sets, they'll come out the same. Sometimes they'll be a little bit off, right? Statistics is all about estimating. But in this case, we see in the larger data sets, there is no difference. The textbook points that out also. Shows you an example, and it says, hey, for larger data sets, not going to be much difference. All right, so I'm going to do the exclusive one. And in this case, I'm going to say 3. Here, watch this. I'm going to do a little trick here. Say I have that .exe. drag it down one, and just change it to I and C. Yeah, they're all the same. Now percentile rank. Now I'm going to use the exclusive. Now percentile rank, what does it do? Oh, it's the opposite of percentile. Percentile rank takes an actual number and will spit out the percentage or the percentile. All right, so the array. Whoops, I hit the wrong key. Comma, and there's our x. Significance is how many digits you want to round to. I'm going to take the default 3. That's fine. Oh, 7.42. Now I'm going to cheat and copy this down here and then change it to I and C. On code. So you can see there is a slight difference here. But for large data sets, there won't be much of a difference. All right, so for this class, if I ask you on a test, I'm going to ask you to use the .inc, quartile also, percentile rank also. We can just straight use that. But we know the meaning of it is, so 75%, that's the marking point. 75% below, 25% above. All right, now we do want to talk about, I'm going to go back over here, back a few sheets to PR. Percent rank here, we're using the function .inc. And then I want to show you a rank and percentile rank tool that's built into the data tab under data analysis. All right, but let's say you got 54, and here's your scores. You want to know what's your percentile, right? What's the percentage of scores below and above? So we're going to use percentile rank I and C. Our array are the values. Our x, that's your score of 54. We'll keep the significant level, rounded to the 3 digits. So there we have it, approximately 76.9 values below score, 54, 23% above. Now, that's the percentile rank. I want to show you how to use the percentile rank tool. I have a little screenshot here. I have 2 of them. So if you download this, you can see how to do this. And there's always, this sheet will be blank, so you can try it yourself. All right, so I have my values. Now I'm going to go up to data. Now data analysis has to be added in. Why they don't just install it by default, I don't know. But we saw this back in chapter 00. You go to File, Options. We go to Add-ins. Down under here, it says Excel Add-ins. You click Go, and be sure and click the Analysis Tool Pack. Click OK. Now when you come to Data, there will be Data Analysis. Earlier we saw histogram. We saw this one. Right now we're going to see the rank and percentile. Click OK. Now I already did it on the sheet once, so it remembers. This is how it comes by default. You have to highlight the range. Now I'm not going to include my header up here, so I'm not going to check that. The data is in columns. Output on this sheet. I'm going to be a little risky and put it right here. Click OK. And so that gives you the actual rank. Oh, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. And the percentile rank. So look, our 54 was 0.769. And so here, our 54, we get the same thing. Now, percentile, the functions are obviously connected to the data. So if you change the underlying data, this updates. This tool does not. All right, so percentile rank. Now, let's go over. We want to look at perhaps 2 more things, but the most important one in this. Oh, no. OK, so we already saw that one. Only one more. We're going to go over to rank. I want to show you how to use the rank function. Now, in 2010 Excel, there's 2 new functions. There's rank equivalent and rank.average. Rank.equivalent will just take a bunch of numbers and rank them. Who got first? Who got second? If there's a tie for fourth, both people will get 4. If you use rank.average, they don't both get 4, because if you have 2 fourth places, it uses up place 4 and place 5. So in that case, you would get 4 plus 5 is 9, divided by 2 is 4.5. So let's see how to do this. rank.equivalent. That means if there's a tie, you get an equivalent score. The number, that's the number you want a rank for, comma, the reference, all of the numbers, that's the numbers to compare it to, F4 to lock it, comma, and you can go biggest is first, which is descending 0, or smallest is first. So I'm going to say 0, Control Enter, double click and send it down. So there's first, there's second. So Tina got second, Chris got first. And there's our tie. So actually, these notes down here should say 4 plus 5 divided by 2 is 4.5. Now let's see how they rank average. Only a slight difference. The number, the reference, F4, comma, and then 0. So the arguments are entered the same. We just have average. All it's going to do is the tie will be treated as a 4.5. 4.5. Now notice for rank.equivalent, 4, 4. There's no 5 here. That 5 is used up here in essence. So then it jumps to 6. Over here, same thing, 4.5. The East get 4.5, and then there's a 6. Now, oftentimes, business and economics, I tend to use this one. However, in sporting events, like in boomerang tournaments, this is the exact method that's described in the rule book. You're not allowed to assign two people 4s. You have to average them like that. By the way, if there was more, so if there was a 3-way tie, this person, they would get 5. So let's see, how can we make a 3-way tie? Just go copy, paste. So now all of these get 4. This jumps to 7. These all get 5. This one goes to 7. Now I'm going to undo that, Control Z. Finally, the percentile rank. So we can compare it to the rank function. I'm going to do percentile rank dot inclusive, the array, all of the numbers, F4, comma, the x, that's the particular value. Remember, percentile rank's going to spit out a percentage. If we give it this number right here, it gives it the percentile. And I used inclusive, right? So first gets 100, 10th gets 0. And so for any particular value right here, for example, Herb is in 3rd place. About 77% of the value is below him, 23% above. All right, so that's a lot in this video. We saw how to rank EQ, and average. We saw how to do percentile rank. We also saw how to do percentile. We saw three calculations. Exclusive, inclusive, this is the one we'll use. We saw quartile, 2 different ways. That's the one we'll use. And percentile rank, that is the one we'll use. All right, in our next video, we'll see how to use our quartile function and have a 0 to 4 and calculate our 5 numbers, min, first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, and max, and do a box plot. See you next video.